Does anyone actually watch late night TV anymore? I mean, of course we catch late night clips online. Occasionally you'll see a monologue from Jimmy Kimmel, or a closer look with Seth Meyers, or a TikTok from Jimmy Fallon. But do most people turn on the TV, change the channel to network television, sit down and watch a late night episode from beginning to end? The answer, of course, for most people is no. Ratings for every single late night show over the last decade have pretty much been tanking. Back in 2019, I made a video called Late Night TV Needs to Change, and it seemed to resonate with people because audiences felt that the format was getting stale. Then, during the quarantine in 2020, the shows were forced to rapidly change their format when they had to make their shows from home.
Hello, and welcome to A Late Show. I'm your host, Stephen Colbert. It's my birthday! In quarantine.
Oh,
Woo,
I just noticed.
Isn't that nice?
And then
the thing. Hold on a second. Okay.
Unfortunately, I was made to look like an idiot when Jimmy Fallon and Paris Hilton saved late night TV by pushing a Bored Ape
My food's
NFT on
here.
the
I'm
Tonight
listening.
Show.
This is your
One
ape.
second. I'm still listening.
It's really cool. Like the hat, the shades.
Now, what? How did you pick? Because you can pick your ape.
Yes, I was going through a lot of them, and I was like, I want something that like kind of reminds me of me, but this one, it does. And then I made another piece by hand. It took me 6 months, and it's a collage of all of my memories.
But years later, it feels like late night is in a very weird place. I feel like we're in late night limbo, and it feels like something that was once an institution in American entertainment is now just like a side thing that happens on the internet. So first, I want to start with the current state of late night, and there's no better person to start that with than America's favorite late night host.
Now, I'm sure that lots of people are wondering how I ended up here in this seat, and I include myself in that too.
There's a lot of things to say about James Corden,
I
but
know this
regardless
guy,
of your
actually.
opinion of him as a person, he's actually a very good example of where the current state of late night is. And that's because in April of 2022, Corden announced that he would be ending his show the day his current contract was over.
Is I've decided to sign for one more year on the show, and that this will be my last year hosting the Late Late Show. Don't you dare.
That day is April 27th, 2023. So officially, the Late Late Show with James Corden
It's done.
is over.
Oh my god.
Hey, wait. Some people liked the show, I'm sure, okay? Now, if this were even 10 years ago, it would be a shock to many that a host in such a sought-after slot on network TV was ending his show so early. There would be constant discussion on why Corden was leaving so soon and what comedian was being scouted to replace him and get a shot at their own late-night show. But when James announced that he was ending his run, the audience reaction was basically, yeah, no, that sounds about right. This is partially because James Corden made himself extremely disliked in the public eye, which, don't worry, I will get to in a minute. But as someone in the US, I had never heard of James until he was announced to take over the Late Late Show from Craig Ferguson.
When do you take over this show, James?
We will start on March 23rd, yes.
Oh, unlucky 23rd of March.
Yeah.
I just want to say, James, I'm delighted it's you. I'm delighted you're taking over, and I'm very, very sorry for what's about to happen.
Craig had gathered somewhat of a cult following and had a very passionate fan base that loved his show, and Corden wasn't alone in replacing a beloved host. James was part of a new generation of late-night hosts because from 2014 to 2015, there was a major shakeup in the late-night lineup. Jay Leno was retiring for the second time, passing The Tonight Show over to Jimmy Fallon. Now you might ask yourself, how do you retire twice? And it's a really simple procedure. First, you leave your job after decades of having it, you gracefully hand the position over to Conan O'Brien, and then you decide that you miss the attention. So you come back, destroy Conan's career for a year or two, and then you decide you're tired and you retire once again.
Has Jay reached out to you?
No.
No calls.
No, I do not think I'll be hearing from him.
As Jimmy moved from Late Night with Jimmy Fallon up to The Tonight Show, Seth Meyers moved to the late night slot from his head writing position at SNL. David Letterman was also retiring, handing his show over to Stephen Colbert. So as all of the older white dudes were retiring, a new, fresh group of hosts were taking over. And this group was much more diverse because yes, they were all white. And yes, they were all dudes, but one was British. Now, James Corden is one of the most interesting TV hosts of all time because it feels like he's been on a multi-year campaign to make himself unlikable. I'm sure you're already aware of his controversy in 2022, but if you're not, James was banned from a top restaurant in New York called Balthazar for being abusive to the staff. The owner of Balthazar said James Corden is a hugely gifted comedian, but a tiny cretin of a man, and the most abusive customer to my Balthazar servers since the restaurant opened 25 years ago. Now, James argued, I believe, that his wife had an allergy and he was just sticking up for her, but people who are servers in restaurants are always accommodating for allergies, and they're not always banning people and making a public statement about it. So I tend to lean toward the people who banned him rather than his defense. I don't bring this up, though, to paint James Corden as a monster. I just want to say that when you are a late night host and you're on people's television screens every single night, likability is really important. And part of that likability, for me at least, is how you treat your crew. And back in 2016, James was playing a game on his show called Spill Your Guts or Fill Your Guts. Now, personally, I think this game is wildly entertaining for television. The basic premise is that James' writers and staff draft questions for him and his guests that are too juicy for them to answer on TV. And they're usually very personal to the guest and James. After being asked the question, they have to make a choice. Do they want to answer this difficult question on TV for everyone to see, or eat a gross food? And during this shooting of the game with Jimmy Kimmel, he was asked this.
Name 2 of the cameramen in this room.
Oh, no. That is a great question.
Don't tell me he's gonna eat the food
tonight, actually.
At this point, Corden's show had been running for over 2 years. As the host of a show, to not even know the names of your crew may have been played off as a joke in the moment, but is wildly unacceptable behavior. I know people have differing opinions on Jimmy Kimmel, but I'm actually glad this happened in front of him, because as a seasoned late night host, Jimmy is pretty famous for the family culture around his crew. I mean, some of his crew are quite literally his family, but I would bet that Jimmy would easily know his cameramen's names. And the same goes for Colbert, Conan, Myers, Trevor Noah, and Fallon. It's even more telling that his own staff are the ones who asked this question. Is this a bigger deal than being abusive to restaurant staff? No. But when you're watching a show constantly, you pick up on these little moments and they might make you not want to watch. Stuff like James finding out that Alice Cooper has a phobia of balloons being rubbed together because he hates the sound. And then James does this.
It's but hang on, I don't know if people know what you're talking about.
Hey.
No, I'm saying... No, I'm saying... No, I'm not making fun. I'm saying, is it that sort of noise?
It's that
Is that noise?
Yes.
So if someone says, that's the one that...
And this last one is a super specific nitpick
so
that is
weird.
not a real problem, but as someone who lives in LA, I have to talk about. Corden's crosswalk musicals are a really funny idea and usually start with a funny sketch where James is parodying people who are too much in the theater industry. But every time he does one of these, I just think about the fact that this is a very busy street in Los Angeles. How do I know? Because I walked there to show you. The premise of the sketch is very funny. They perform a musical number, but the second the crosswalk goes red, they have to scream and run off to allow traffic to start. But every time they do one of these, we see clips of unhappy drivers who don't give a shit about James Corden and just want to go home.
Let's get loud.
Oh, wow.
They programmed this light to last longer and clock traffic just so James can do a bit.
Get off the car, dude. What are you doing? Holy, break that car.
But as I stood there trying to get footage to show you how busy the crosswalk can get even in the early afternoon, I started to become overwhelmed by the sheer star power of it all. The crosswalk was labeled Corden Crosswalk, and I could see his face plastered on the CBS building. International superstars had stood right here. People like Harry Styles, BTS, or Josh Gad. And that's when it hit me. I could cross the walk myself. This was it. this was my moment. So I clicked the crosswalk button, waited for the countdown, and finally, it was exhilarating. Okay, so I just crossed the cordon crosswalk, and I feel great. I found myself crossing again and again.
Number 3 was good, but how about number 4?
I just couldn't get enough.
All right, that is 7 times across the cordon crosswalk.
What?
And I
That's
can't
so
get
many
enough.
I could feel the energy of fame coursing through my veins. If you're famous, who cares if you stop traffic for people going home from work? Who cares if you're abusive to restaurant staff?
Smells like James.
Some people know your name and face, and that makes you better.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to The Tonight Show. You are here. Thank you for watching.
The reason I want to talk about Fallon after James Corden is because to me, even though Corden follows Colbert on CBS, he's always kind of seemed like Diet Jimmy Fallon. In 2014, when Jimmy took over, he exploded The Tonight Show's ratings and pretty instantly became the king of late night. This was mainly due to The Tonight Show's ability to showcase Jimmy's friendly personality as he played games and did stunts with celebrities.
And right now we're going to try a new game called Facebasketball.
At this time, whether you like him or not, Jimmy made The Tonight Show the late night show to watch on TV and on YouTube. But I think long term, this has ended up hurting Jimmy more than it helped. But before we keep going, a quick word from our sponsor. Hey everybody, I just bought this new hat. And the reason I chose this cool, easy, also this third four they've ever from a late night host. I think the hat is too big. I think I need to return it. People expect a lot from a late night host. They have to be friendly, yes, but they also have to be quick, great at stand-up every single night, one of the best interviewers on TV, and more. And aside from the host, for a very long time, the big draw to late night was its access to celebrity culture. Before the internet, if there was a celebrity you liked that you wanted to see interviewed, you could tune into The Tonight Show to see what they were like. Nowadays, you have near unlimited access to content of people that you want to follow. You can see daily social media posts from celebrities, a million press junkets when they promote their movies or TV shows. There are podcast appearances, YouTube interviews, live streams, and more. I honestly think a change in that culture is also a huge reason people don't tune in live to these shows. And during the 2016 election, a lot of audiences started to want to see their host increase the amount that they lampooned the day's news. So when The Tonight Show put all their eggs into the fun celebrity show with Jimmy Fallon basket, it didn't transition well to this new era of late night, with Jimmy actively avoiding politics and admitting later that he regretted it. I also think other than the 2016 election, there was a measurable shift in the public's desire for celebrity content. One moment on a specific day that caused most people to lose interest in idolizing celebrities and finally view them as regular people. Imagine all the people that were put off by one video.
Imagine this. Oh, I can't watch this. I can't watch
I like to pretend that Pedro wasn't in that video. He was shooting Wonder Woman. He did it for his co-star. He was trying to be nice. We forgive you, Pedro. I will say, though, that in the past, I think we were all a little too hard on Jimmy Fallon. When someone takes a seat on such a prestigious throne, we expect absolute perfection from them. And I think filling the shoes of Johnny Carson or being better than Conan O'Brien is way too much to ask from the guy. And it's not like The Tonight Show is unwatchable. A lot of people really love him and the show. I will also always praise Jimmy for choosing the Roots as his band.
And now, Jimmy Kimmel!
I feel so unbelievably neutral on Jimmy Kimmel. Maybe once or twice a year I'll catch a monologue he did or a viral segment from his show, but I've never really felt strongly about him. I will say I think he and Corden had the most boring quarantine shows. Jimmy Kimmel Live is probably the most cookie-cutter classic late-night show format of all of them.
Honestly.
One thing I did notice, though, is that Kimmel seems to interlace a lot of his monologue with viral video clips and clips from the news before he makes jokes about them. It feels a bit more like a modern take on a monologue because he's reacting to them a little bit more, and they do really well on YouTube for that reason, I think. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really feel strongly about Jimmy Kimmel.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in here, out there, all around the world to The Late Show. I am I am your host, Stephen Colbert.
So when we're looking at the current state of late night and how the format works after quarantine, a lot of hosts have not changed much since they came back, especially the big three, Fallon, Colbert, and Kimmel. Fallon, of course, wasn't equipped for the political change in late night, but if anyone on the planet was, it was Stephen Colbert fresh off the Colbert Report. In my older videos, I've expressed that when I was a teenager, the Colbert Report was one of the best pieces of satire and performance art that I had ever seen in my life. I and many others were slightly disappointed to see that once The Late Show had premiered and run for about a year, the show just wasn't quite as funny or as smart as the Colbert Report. But honestly, years later, I'm not sure if that would have even been possible for him at all. Stephen was doing a satirical character after nearly a decade of playing him. He was then hired to be himself and replace David Letterman in the late night format. And I think Stephen's comedy, when it's not character-based, is just really not for me most of the time. I think I speak for most young late night viewers when I say that I actually really like Stephen Colbert, but I don't watch his show much anymore. I actually preferred seeing even more of Stephen's personality when he was unscripted with his wife Evie during quarantine. But since then, the show has kind of gone back to exactly what it was before COVID started. I do want to retract something, though, that I said in 2019 about Colbert being a mediocre interviewer. While I do think that some hosts like Myers or Conan are better at elevating comedians in interviews, and Colbert maybe isn't the best at it, I have seen some really honest and compassionate moments from Stephen with his guests.
You yourself have suffered great grief just recently with the loss of your mother, and I'm sorry for your family's loss.
Thank you.
And I'm wondering how doing this show or any show, how art itself helps you deal with grief.
Yeah.
Colbert also added something to their YouTube lineup where he takes questions from the audience in between tapings, which is something originally that Trevor Noah started at The Daily Show. But I love these segments. I think what's really special about Stephen Colbert is he seems like an extremely intelligent and compassionate person.
You went on to say what punishments of God are not gifts. Do you really believe that?
Yes. So what do you get from loss? You get awareness of other people's loss.
Well, that's true. Empathy.
Which allows you to connect with that other person.
Right.
Which allows you to love more deeply and to understand what it's like to be a human being.
Hey everybody, I'm Seth Myers. This is Late Night. We
Cringe
hope you're
take.
doing well. And now, if you don't mind, we're going to get to the news.
I've mentioned in the past that as the network late night shows have progressed, and especially since Conan is off the air now, Late Night with Seth Meyers is easily my favorite. Seth is funny, he's really good with guests, and seems to have a great relationship with his crew and writers.
Who ate my weed gummies? Wally? Tom? There were a lot of gummies in this jar. Who ate them? Bianca? Sarah?
Did my door just get knocked? 1 second.
Brian?
During quarantine, I praised Seth for being the first to quickly adapt his show to shooting from home. His A Closer Look segments were the only regular late night that I could watch other than the...
They're making it's a funny joke. Stop with the... Stop, listen. Does this not make you laugh?
Seems to...
Wally? Tom? There were a lot of gummies in this jar. Who ate them? Bianca? Sarah?
It's funny.
Brian?
During quarantine, I praised Seth
really
for being
funny.
the first to quickly
Stop
adapt his show to
making fun of
shooting from
him.
home. His A Closer Look segments were the only regular late night that I could watch other than the occasional Trevor Noah segment from The Daily Show. As a fan of late night, though, because their shows were made in their home and felt like YouTube videos, I started exclusively watching late night on YouTube and abandoned watching it on TV altogether.
Right.
This is where, in my opinion, we started to see the beginning of the end for late night as an institution in American culture. Because
People
from
stopped watching it.
2014 to
People watched
2020,
YouTube.
late night was forced to rapidly change with the times as video on the internet became the primary source for entertainment.
Right.
Every show started introducing segments that were meant to go viral on YouTube. And for a time, that was a great way to entice young people to get off YouTube and tune into the show on TV. But ever
Right.
since quarantine, I've stopped watching live TV altogether. As a
Right.
26-year-old, I just don't catch cable or network TV
He's
live.
26? This guy is younger than me? This is not real. This is not true. This can't be real. This can't be real.
And I barely watch cable or network TV unless it's on streaming the next day, with the one exception of watching SNL live, which I've been doing less and less lately just because it's not normal for me to watch TV as a young person. I don't have a cable package, and you cannot force me to get a cable package. I will never do it, Comcast. You'll never get me again. Real quick, I totally forgot to mention this while I was
Insulting him is punishable by death. I'm not insulting him. I'm just saying 26 is not a believable number. I actually don't believe him. I don't believe him. I think he's like 37. No, not 37. I was going to say 32. He's like 32 years old.
Making the entire video.
He's like 32
the Yikes
years
clothing
old.
that
That's how old he is. 32. He's not 26.
I'm wearing throughout the whole thing is new merch, and I didn't think to mention it once. It's at yikeshop.com, or the link is in the description to click. I'm so sorry I didn't mention it before. Back to the video. And this is where I think I disagree with the energy
Here he could be maybe in his 20s. He could be 26 here, but this is
of my video in 2019.
This video is 4 years old, and he looks 26 here.
Most. Because at the end of the
I'm
day,
sorry.
no matter who changed the format in what way or who hosted what show, late night is past its prime simply because times have changed. I mentioned access
He was
to
born in the same year as me? That is so bullshit.
Celebrity culture not being a draw to late night anymore, but almost every feature of late night TV has thousands of alternatives online or in streaming services. Do you want to watch some celebrity interviews? You could watch Hot Ones, or a podcast they were on, or magazine interviews like GQ or Wired on YouTube. Do you want to see topical comedy on today's news? Everyone on Twitter has already beaten every joke to death on the topic before the day's late night episode even begins taping. Late night audiences have watched some hosts change their format and continue to keep up with them on YouTube, but there is simply too much good content out there in the world to expect most people to shut it all off and tune into an hour of network television. Conan had completely shifted his show around until finally settling on the fact that late night was no longer a good format for him. He now has an extremely successful podcast where he does much more personal and in-depth interviews he couldn't do in the old format. He also has been developing what seems to be a full show for his remotes and travel remotes, which was a wildly successful new format to his show that showcased his talents much better than being forced to do a monologue in a suit in front of a live audience. It's why I don't blame Trevor Noah for leaving The Daily Show. He's young, very intelligent, and full of potential. Why waste it on a cable show on Comedy Central that people are almost exclusively watching on YouTube? Especially when every other late night show has become a form of The Daily Show for the most part.
Right.
And other comedians like John Oliver, Hassan Minhaj, and Z-Way have all tried to radically change the format. And as a viewer, all three of these shows totally work for me, but Hassan's Patriot Act and Z-Way both got canceled. I think that's probably why we saw Trevor Noah leave without passing the show to a successor, leaving The Daily Show to just cycle through guest hosts for now, and CBS ending The Late Late Show along with Corden ending his run. They're actually replacing it with a reboot of At Midnight from Comedy Central? I just never thought I would see At Midnight return ever again.
What is this?
So can shows like Late Night work? Yes.
Can
of
TV
course.
still
But
work?
I don't think we'll ever see late night as an institution again, because at the time it was one of like 3 things on TV. Year by year, the late night business makes less money and ratings go down. And I think that has more to do with atmosphere than the hosts themselves. When I was 13, my parents got a cable package that required...
I just feel like TV is gonna get killed at this point. It's just they just have to do YouTube shows. If it was the exact same thing, but it was a YouTube show, like if the whole thing was just uploaded on YouTube, it would probably be just this. It would probably be fine. They're just not getting views because it's not. Nobody watches TV.
There are 2 extra
Like
cable
my parents
boxes
do,
to be
that's it.
installed in our house. That meant that for the first time...
Even streaming services are dying. I'm not watching streaming services. My ass is not watching. I'm not watching Netflix. I'm not watching Amazon Prime. I'm not watching any of these things. Why would I spend 2 hours watching a movie when I can watch a TikTok for like 37 seconds? Or when I can watch like a YouTube video? Like the attention span gets shorter and shorter and shorter, and the accessibility gets easier and easier and easier. I don't want to have to pay for something, log in, and have not that much option. Like just like there's not. I don't know. Nobody watches just one TikTok, but you don't have to commit to 2 hours with TikTok. When you watch one episode of a TV show, you're committing for like an hour at times, you know? But the ease of access, like the lack of commitment, is kind of a nice thing for the most part, with like other forms of media.
My brother Tony and I had access to watch what we wanted later at night. Now this coincidentally was right.
The other thing is, you have to pay attention, is how I feel with like a lot of movies, especially if it's a new movie. That's why I often like to rewatch old movies more than I like to watch. So, because there's two different kinds of attention. There's active attention and passive attention, essentially, right? And active attention, like watching a 2-hour movie and being engaged the entire time, is pretty hard. But active attention, watching like TikToks for 15 minutes, is doable. Because they're constantly cycling new video, new video, new video, new video. If something doesn't keep your attention, you swipe to the next one, you swipe to the next one. So you can keep active attention on like Twitter, on TikTok, on YouTube pretty easily. But passive attention is what you want to just have as background noise, essentially. And background noise, I need way longer, actually, than a movie. Like, that's what I like streams for. Streams are background noise for me for 4 to 6 hours straight, basically. I throw Kriparian on at night when I'm sleepy, and I just leave it on as background noise, and he goes from 10 p.m. until like 3 a.m., and I fall asleep at 3 a.m., and I don't watch the stream for 80% of that time, but the noise is there. It's like keeping me company, I guess. So, like, TV fills neither of these niches, and neither do TV shows or movies, because if you have seen them before, then they can do that. I can watch a TV show that I've seen before as background noise, but I can't
Right around
watch
the
one
time
I've
that
never seen.
Conan O'Brien agreed to start his show again on TBS. At the time, this was a huge deal running off the Tonight Show drama. So we tuned in to watch his premiere episode, and I cannot stress how instantly hooked we were on his show. For years, I was glued to the TV almost every single night to watch him. I love how silly he allowed himself to be, how frequently he made himself the butt of a joke to elevate his guests. Andy was always quick and hilarious, and anytime Conan did a remote, I was beyond excited. And for most of my teenage years, I had two dreams in my life. One is that I wanted to make movies or be involved in making movies. And the other was to one day become a comedian with my own late night show. And that's what made the 2014 to 2015 transition so exciting for me. It was really cool seeing the differences in what every show's crew, writers, and hosts had to offer to the format. But much like the format, that dream has slowly faded over time, and that's okay. Times change, the world changes, and people's interests change.
Right.
So who knows what the future of late night will be? Maybe it'll fizzle out and die, or maybe it'll just drop in ratings and never be as influential as it once was. But there is something that I do know for sure, and that's the fact that if you have any positive memory laughing at a late night show with yourself or friends or family, it would be 100% impossible without the talented writers on staff at these shows.
Right.
Now, I'm sure you've heard about this, but if you haven't, currently the Writers Guild of America is on strike negotiating with major studios.
Then we begin with the WGA strike. Writers say they are fighting to make screenwriting a sustainable career once again.
Writers on average now getting paid 23% less than 15 years ago when adjusted for inflation.
Times are changing fast in entertainment, which is why I was overjoyed to see all of the hosts and late night shows pause their production to support the writers in this situation.
These are our writers, and I'll stick myself in there because I'm WGA too, and they're so important to our show.
I need my writers. I need them real bad.
Yeah, I got no show without my writers.
No one is entitled to a job in show business, but for those people who have a job in show business, they are entitled to fair compensation. They are entitled to make a living.
Because while some people who are critical of the
Finally,
strike
some good
online
content,
think that the
Aoife stream.
Hollywood
Oh my God, it's
elite
Big
are
E.
striking for more
No
money,
freaking way.
it's not the case at all. The Hollywood elite you're thinking of are studio execs that get super, super rich off of the work of the writers. So if you
Of
are
course.
against the Hollywood elite and pro the little guy, then you should be pro this union and pro the strike. And with that being said, I have one more very important thing to do.
Been walking around in circles.
You feel like the host probably didn't choose to pause the show for the writers.
This will be
to
my
inform
last
about
year
them.
hosting the
So,
late. Don't you dare.
So, I think it was, I read George R. R. Martin's statement on the writers' strike, which I felt was quite insightful. But what George R. R. Martin said was, this strike has been, what's the word? The writing has been on the walls for this strike for a while now. People have been very aware. Yeah, it's been very clear that this was coming. And as a result, the executives with shows have been stockpiling, hoarding scripts, like a dragon hoarding its fucking gold. And they've been hoarding them for this moment. So while the writers go on strike, they sit on a hoard of already written scripts to work with. So this writer's strike can't just be, we strike for a month, we strike for 2 months, maybe, because people are sitting on scripts, and in order for them to actually start feeling the effects of the strike, they need to they need to be striking here for 3 months, potentially. I think the longest strike ever was 100 days for the Writers Guild. So they're looking at 3+ months of striking here to make them feel, to make the executives actually feel something. If they don't go that long, they accomplish nothing, which is a shitty position to be in. But essentially, they are, the writers are obviously disadvantaged here because they have to survive for months, on strike, and the executives are sitting on reserve supplies they've been hoarding for a while. So, yeah. So.
Overdue conversation. Why we're falling apart. Awake, tossing and turning. One more endless.
Blimey, Harry, me eggs are overcooked. Let's make the waiter cry.
You were talking.
My eggs are overcooked. Let's make the waiter cry.
So now I thank you for making it easy to Thank you for making it easy to leave.
Also, he didn't talk about the what's his name flight thing. Let me go find it. Sorry, you linked it earlier. Half an hour in New York to London, flight passengers, business class, and a woman with a crying baby being brought through the curtains by a flight attendant. They got a mouth horrors who saw the attendant direct her into an empty seat next to James Corden. Expecting a huge celebrity hissy fit to kick off, Corden's cabin mates were impressed to see that he didn't say a word or make any sort of complaint. He simply put on a pair of noise-canceling headphones, pulled an eye mask over his eyes, and turned away from her to sleep. Pretty decent of him, right? When the plane landed, though, passengers were surprised to see Corden remain seated as the woman with the baby struggled to open the overhead locker. And even more surprised when she turned to Corden and said, For fuck's sake, can you at least hold the baby while I get the bags done? The woman was his wife. The baby was his baby. What? I was like here in the thing, and I was like, how is this a bad story? What's wrong with this? What's wrong with this story? He seems like a stand-up guy. I can't believe that. There's no shot. There's no way.
Listen, it's about drive, it's about power. It's time for Discord mods to take a damn shower. Dank Schrader here with a message to Goof Gunk. Goof, no space gunk on YouTube. Listen, Goof Gunk, I spent all my Robux on mug root beer. Mug moment. I saw you get sturdy as you vented in electrical. So, I challenge you to compete against me at the Goofy Eye Yearly Gritty competition in Ohio. When I get the free copy of Black Adam on the DS, loser gets to be fed to Nicocado Avocado. All right? We'll do that. We'll see who gets sturdy then, you sussy Gussie.